Handcuffs clicked shut around the wrists of a top-tier law student whose only crime was walking home while black. The arresting officers thought they'd bagged an easy street conviction. They had absolutely no idea the young man bleeding in their cruiser was the son of a powerful federal judge. Freezing November rain lashed against the cobblestones of Philadelphia as Jordan Langford pushed through the heavy wooden doors of the Pencarry Law Building. It was late at night. As a third-year law student in the top 5% of his class, Jordan practically lived in the bid law library. Tonight, he had been outlining a complex civil procedure paper, his brain still swimming with federal statutes and appellate court precedents. He was young, tall, dressed in a thick navy peacoat, dark denim jeans, and a gray hooded sweatshirt pulled up to shield his neck from the biting wind. He was exhausted, hungry, and just wanted to get back to his off-campus apartment on Spruce Street. 2 blocks into his walk, the distinct aggressive screech of tires cut through the quiet night. Red and blue lights violently illuminated the wet brick facades of the historic townhouses. A Philadelphia Police Department cruiser mounted the curb just inches from Jordan's boots, cutting off his path. The driver's side door kicked open before the car even fully settled in park. Officer Nolan Pierce stepped out. Pierce was in his late 20s, built like a bulldog with a tense, aggressive energy that radiated off him. His hand was already resting heavily on the butt of his service weapon. His partner, an older, heavier man named Officer Caleb Voss, flanked the passenger side, shining a blinding 1,000-lumen tactical flashlight directly into Jordan's eyes. "Hey, hands out of your pockets right now," Pierce barked, his voice echoing off the narrow street. Jordan froze, his heart hammering against his ribs. He had grown up learning the law, but he had also grown up a black man in America. He knew exactly how fast a misunderstanding could turn lethal. Slowly, deliberately, he withdrew his hands, making sure his palms were open and visible in the blinding glare of the flashlight. "I'm just walking home, officer," Jordan said, keeping his voice carefully modulated, low and calm. "Step over to the wall. Turn around," Pierce commanded, closing the distance between them. "Officer, with respect, am I being detained or am I free to go?" Jordan asked. The words were second nature to him. It was a standard legal threshold under Terry v. Ohio. A police officer requires reasonable, articulable suspicion that a crime has been, is being, or is about to be committed to stop and frisk someone. Pierce stopped in his tracks, his jaw tightening. His ego flared immediately. "Did I ask for a debate? I said turn around and put your hands on the brick." "I'm happy to cooperate," Jordan replied, not moving his feet. "But I'd like to know what crime you suspect me of committing. I'm simply walking home from the university." "You fit the description of a suspect who just hit a brownstone on Delancey," Pierce snapped, stepping directly into Jordan's personal space. The officer smelled of stale coffee and adrenaline. "Tall black male, dark clothing. Now turn around before I make you turn around." "That description fits half the men in this city," Jordan stated calmly, quoting the very argument he had discussed in a constitutional law seminar recently. "That is not specific enough to establish reasonable suspicion for a stop." That was the wrong thing to say to Officer Nolan Pierce. "Oh, we got a street corner lawyer here," Pierce sneered. Before Jordan could blink, Pierce lunged. The officer grabbed the lapels of Jordan's peacoat, spun him around with violent force, and slammed him face first into the rough, wet brick of the alleyway. The impact knocked the wind out of Jordan, and a jagged edge of masonry sliced his cheekbone. Warm blood instantly welled up, mixing with the freezing rain on his face. "Stop resisting!" Pierce yelled, a performative shout clearly meant for his partner's body camera. "I am not resisting," Jordan shouted back, his cheek pressed agonizingly against the brick. He didn't fight back. He didn't twitch. He knew better. His father, the Honorable Marcus Langford, a highly respected federal judge on the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, had drilled this into him since he was a boy. The street is not a courtroom. You cannot out-argue a gun. Survive the street and we will destroy them in the courtroom. Pierce roughly kicked Jordan's legs apart, patted him down with unnecessary aggression, and yanked his arms behind his back. The cold steel of the handcuffs bit into Jordan's wrists, ratcheted down so tightly they instantly cut off his circulation. "You're under arrest for obstruction and failure to comply with a lawful order." Pierce breathed heavily into Jordan's ear. "That's an unlawful arrest," Jordan said through gritted teeth, blood dripping from his chin onto his coat. "You're violating my Fourth Amendment rights." "Save it for the judge, kid," Pierce laughed mockingly. They dragged him to the cruiser, shoved his head down, and threw him into the hard plastic back seat. The doors slammed shut. In the darkness of the police car, Jordan sat completely still. His face throbbed, his wrists were in agony, but beneath the physical pain, a cold, calculating anger began to crystallize in his mind. He wasn't just a scared kid. He was an apex predator of the legal system, trained by the best legal minds in the country, and these two officers had just handed him a golden ticket to expose the rot in their precinct. He made a silent vow in the back of that cruiser. "I'm not going to say a single word about who my father is. Not yet. I'm going to let them dig this hole so deep they'll never see daylight again." The 9th District precinct smelled intensely of industrial bleach, cheap stale tobacco, and the distinct sour odor of human desperation. It was a crumbling, brutalist building where constitutional rights went to die. Jordan was hauled through the double doors, stumbling slightly as Pierce pushed him from behind. They marched him up to the high wooden booking desk. The desk sergeant, an older man with bags under his eyes, barely looked up from his computer screen. "What have we got?" the sergeant mumbled. "Suspect matching the Rittenhouse burglaries," Pierce announced proudly, dropping Jordan's leather wallet onto the counter. "Gave me static on the street. Resisted. Think we got our guy?" The sergeant opened the wallet and pulled out Jordan's Pennsylvania driver's license. He typed the name into the system. Jordan Langford. It was a common enough name. The address listed was a generic apartment building in University City. Because Jordan had never been in trouble with the law, his record was sparkling clean. No warrants, no priors. To the tired desk sergeant, Jordan was just another statistic, another body to process before shift change. Nobody bothered to cross-reference his last name with the federal judiciary database. Nobody looked at the blood on his face and offered medical attention. "Empty your pockets, take off your shoelaces, and lose the belt," the sergeant ordered. Shortly after, Jordan was locked in interview room 3. It was a classic claustrophobic box. Pale green cinderblock walls, a steel table bolted to the floor, and a two-way mirror that looked like it hadn't been cleaned in years. A single camera in the corner glowed with a small red light. Jordan sat in the hard plastic chair. He focused on his breathing. He mentally cataloged every single procedural violation that had occurred since late at night. 1. Unlawful Terry stop without reasonable, articulable suspicion. 2. Excessive force during detainment. 3. False arrest. 4. Denial of immediate medical care for a laceration sustained during arrest. The list was growing. He was writing a civil rights lawsuit in his head, paragraph by paragraph. Early morning, the heavy metal door clicked open. In walked Detective Victor Hale. Hale was a smooth operator wearing a wrinkled off-the-rack suit carrying a thick manila folder. He had been under immense pressure from the mayor's office to solve the string of high-end burglaries in the wealthy Rittenhouse Square neighborhood. Rich people were getting robbed, which meant the police commissioner was yelling at the captain, who was yelling at Hale. He needed a scapegoat. Hale dropped the file on the metal table with a loud theatrical smack. He pulled out the chair opposite Jordan and sat down, folding his hands. He stared at Jordan for a long, silent moment, trying to assert dominance. Jordan simply stared back, his expression completely blank, holding eye contact without flinching. "You're a long way from home, Jordan," Hale began, his tone deceptively gentle. The classic good cop routine. "It's late. You're bleeding. I want you to go home to your bed, but I can't do that until we clear up a few things." Jordan remained silent. "We've got a dozen townhouses broken into over the last month," Hale continued, flipping open the empty file to make it look like he had evidence. "Rolexes, laptops, cash. And tonight my officers catch you fleeing the scene of another break-in, wearing the exact clothes our witnesses described. It was a blatant lie. Police are legally allowed to lie to suspects during interrogations, a precedent upheld in Frazier versus Cupp. Jordan knew the case law intimately. He knew Hale was fishing. "Here's how this goes," Hale leaned in, lowering his voice. "You tell me what you did with the property from the Delancey Street house, and I talk to the DA. I tell them you cooperated. We get this knocked down to a misdemeanor trespassing charge. You get probation. You go on with your life. You stay quiet, and I bury you with multiple felony counts of burglary. You're looking at 10 to 20 years. Your life is over." Jordan took a slow, deliberate breath. He looked Hale dead in the eye. "Detective," Jordan said, his voice crystal clear and unwavering in the small room, "I am invoking my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent, and I am invoking my Sixth Amendment right to the presence of legal counsel. I will not answer any questions without an attorney present." Hale's friendly facade instantly dissolved. His jaw clenched. He hated when suspects knew their rights, but he was used to breaking them down anyway. "You think playing tough is going to help you?" Hale sneered, leaning back in his chair. "You don't have a lawyer here. It's just you and me. And until you give me something, you're not going anywhere." "I request my statutory right to a phone call," Jordan demanded evenly. Hale let out a dry, mocking laugh. "Phones are down. System maintenance. You'll get your call when I decide you've earned it." Violation number 5, Jordan thought. Denial of counsel and refusal of a phone call after the invocation of Miranda rights. "Suit yourself, kid," Hale said, slamming the file shut and standing up. "I'm going to let you sit here and think about your future. Think about a decade in Graterford prison. When you're ready to stop playing games and confess, knock on the door." Hale walked out, letting the heavy steel door slam shut behind him. The lock clicked heavily into place. Alone in the cold room, Jordan wiped a smear of dried blood from his jawline. He wasn't scared anymore. He was exhilarated. Hale and Pierce had no idea that the trap hadn't been set for Jordan. The trap had been set for them. All Jordan had to do was wait for the sun to rise, and the entire Philadelphia Police Department was going to experience a legal earthquake. Because in a short time, his father, Judge Marcus Langford, was going to wake up, realize his son hadn't come home, and start making phone calls. And when a federal judge goes looking for his son, hell follows right behind him. Morning sunlight finally broke through the heavy, overcast sky, casting a pale, cold glow over the wealthy suburbs of the main line. Inside a sprawling brick colonial estate in Villanova, the Honorable Marcus Langford sat at the head of a mahogany dining table, a cup of black coffee cooling in his hands. He was a man of formidable presence, broad-shouldered with silver hair and piercing brown eyes that had stared down white-collar criminals, corrupt politicians, and cartel bosses for years. As a senior judge on the United States Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit, Marcus was a pillar of the federal judiciary. In the morning, his wife Sarah walked into the kitchen, her brow furrowed with concern. "Marcus, have you heard from Jordan?" she asked, clutching her silk robe. "I called him twice. It's going straight to voicemail. He promised he'd come over for breakfast before his constitutional law seminar." Marcus frowned, pulling out his smartphone. Jordan was meticulous. He never missed a commitment, and he certainly never ignored his mother's calls. Marcus dialed the number straight to voicemail. A prickle of unease crawled up the judge's spine. He immediately dialed a different number. "Security desk, Bid Law Library," a voice answered. "This is Judge Marcus Langford. My son Jordan Langford is a third-year student. Can you check the swipe logs to see what time he exited the building last night?" Moments later, the security guard confirmed Jordan had swiped out of the law library late at night. Marcus's heart rate accelerated, but his judicial training kicked in, suppressing the panic of a father and replacing it with the cold, methodical logic of an investigator. He mapped the route from the library to Jordan's apartment on Spruce Street. It was a short walk. If he left late at night, he should have been home shortly after. Marcus didn't wait. He immediately dialed his closest friend, William Harlan. William wasn't just a friend. He was the managing partner of Philadelphia's most ruthless civil rights litigation firm. "Bill," Marcus said the moment the line connected, "Jordan is missing. He left Penn Law late at night and never made it home. His phone is dead." I'm on it, Art, William replied, his voice instantly sharp. I'll run his name through the central booking database right now. Give me moments. While he waited, Marcus walked to the hallway closet and pulled out his heavy wool trench coat. He was already slipping his arms into the sleeves when his phone rang. It was William. Art, William said, his tone ominously flat. They have him. The 9th District. He was booked early morning. The charge listed in the system is obstruction and resisting arrest. Marcus froze. Resisting arrest. His son, who had spent his entire life studying the law, who knew exactly how to de-escalate, who was groomed for a federal clerkship, was sitting in a holding cell accused of fighting the police. I'm picking you up shortly after, Marcus said, his voice dropping to a terrifying, icy baritone. Bring a blank spoliation of evidence letter. We are going to war. Meanwhile, back in interview room 3 at the 9th District Precinct, Detective Victor Hale had returned for round 2. He slammed a lukewarm cup of coffee onto the metal table, spilling dark liquid across the surface. Sun's up, kid, Hale said, dragging his chair back. Shift changes in an hour. If you don't give me a confession by the time I clock out, I'm sending you to central booking, and you're going to spend the weekend in county lockup. You ever been to county? They love college kids like you. Jordan stared at the coffee, then slowly looked up at Hale. His right cheek was badly swollen, a dark purple bruise blooming around the jagged cut from the brick wall. Despite the physical toll, Jordan's eyes were completely clear, calculating, and devoid of fear. Detective Hale, Jordan said calmly. Under Edwards v. Arizona, once a suspect invokes their Fifth Amendment right to counsel, law enforcement must immediately cease all interrogation until an attorney is present. You are currently committing a severe violation of my constitutional rights. Hale rolled his eyes, leaning heavily on the table. I told you, kid. Phones are down. You don't get a lawyer until I say you get a lawyer. Out here on the street, I am the Supreme Court. You're also violating departmental policy regarding the provision of medical care to detainees, Jordan continued, his voice steady. And I'm fairly certain your initial stop violated Terry v. Ohio, as a generic description of a tall black male in dark clothing fails to meet the threshold of reasonable, articulable suspicion. Hale's face flushed red with anger. He stood up, knocking his chair backward. He was furious that his intimidation tactics were bouncing off this young man like bullets off Kevlar. Listen to me, you arrogant little... Before Hale could finish his threat, the heavy steel door to the interrogation room didn't just open. It was practically kicked off its hinges. Captain Theodore Harlan, the commanding officer of the 9th District, stood in the doorway. He was a veteran cop, tough as nails, but right now all the color had completely drained from his face. He was sweating profusely, his uniform shirt clinging to his chest. Behind him, the hallway was a flurry of chaotic, terrified motion. Hale turned, confused. Captain, I'm in the middle of... Get out of here, Captain Harlan choked out, his voice trembling. He grabbed Hale by the shoulder and physically yanked him away from the table. Get the hell out of this room right now, Hale. Hale stumbled back into the hallway, bewildered. What's going on? The kid is breaking. He's not breaking, you idiot, Harlan hissed, his voice dropping to a panicked whisper that carried perfectly into the quiet room. Do you have any idea who you just locked in a cage? Do you have any idea who is standing at my front desk right now? Down the hall, the sound of heavy, deliberate footsteps echoed on the linoleum floor. The chaotic murmurs of the precinct fell into a dead, terrified silence. Marcus Langford had arrived. Judge Marcus Langford did not walk into the 9th District Precinct. He invaded it. Flanked by William Harlan, Marcus bypassed the security line, ignored the desk sergeant's protests, and pushed straight through the swinging wooden doors into the restricted bullpen area. He radiated an aura of absolute unyielding authority. Every police officer in the room instinctively stepped back. Captain Harlan practically sprinted down the hallway to intercept them, his hands raised in a gesture of desperate surrender. Judge Langford, Your Honor, please. There has been a massive misunderstanding, Harlan pleaded, his voice cracking. I am so sorry. We are sorting this out immediately. Marcus didn't even look at the captain. He kept walking toward the interrogation rooms. Where is my son? He demanded, his voice echoing off the cinderblock walls like thunder. "Room 3, Your Honor. Right this way. The door is open." Harlan scrambled, leading the way. Marcus stepped into the doorway of interview room 3. When he saw Jordan sitting at the metal table, handcuffed to the chair, his face bruised, dried blood caking his jaw and staining the collar of his expensive peacoat, Marcus stopped dead. A dangerous, deadly silence descended on the room. William Harlan stepped up behind the judge, his eyes narrowing as he took in the scene. For a fraction of a second, the stoic federal judge cracked, and a devastated father looked at his injured boy. But Marcus quickly locked that emotion away in a steel vault. This was not the time for tears. This was the time for destruction. "Jordan," Marcus said softly. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine, Dad," Jordan replied, managing a small, pained smile. "Just a little tired. The hospitality here leaves a lot to be desired." Marcus turned slowly to face Captain Harlan, Detective Hale, and Officer Pierce, who had been dragged in from the break room. Pierce, the arresting officer, was looking at the floor, suddenly realizing his career was flashing before his eyes. "Who struck my son?" Marcus asked. He didn't yell. The terrifying calmness of his voice made the cop's blood run cold. No one spoke. The silence was deafening. "My client is severely injured," William Harlan announced, stepping forward and handing a sealed envelope to Captain Harlan. "This is a formal preservation order. You are legally mandated, as of this exact second, to freeze and preserve all body camera footage, dash camera footage, holding cell surveillance, and radio dispatch logs from late at night onward. If a single second of footage goes missing, I will personally see to it that the FB tears this precinct down to the foundation for spoliation of evidence." Harlan took the envelope with a shaking hand. "Mr. Harlan, Judge Langford, we are dropping all charges immediately. Jordan is free to go. It was a mistaken identity, a bad description." "Mistaken identity?" Jordan finally spoke up from the table. He looked at Officer Pierce. "He didn't mistake my identity. He didn't care about my identity. I asked him if I was being detained under Terry versus Ohio, and his response was to slam my face into a brick wall, because he didn't like that I knew my rights." Pierce swallowed hard, refusing to make eye contact. "Take the handcuffs off my client now," Harlan ordered. A terrified patrolman rushed forward with a key, unlocking the cuffs. Jordan rubbed his raw, bruised wrists and slowly stood up. He walked over to his father and Harlan, but then he turned back to face Hale and Pierce. "Detective Hale," Jordan said, his voice ringing with absolute clarity. "You denied my request for an attorney. You denied my phone call. You threatened me with felony burglary charges to coerce a confession for a crime you knew I didn't commit. That is a clear violation of my Fifth and Sixth Amendment rights, and a blatant abuse of color of law under Title 18, USC, Section 242. Hale looked like he was going to be sick. Jordan turned his gaze to Pierce. "Officer Pierce, badge number. You executed a false arrest, utilized excessive force, and committed battery. You thought I was just a target. You thought I had no voice." Jordan straightened his coat, looking every bit the lethal attorney he was about to become. "My father is not going to ruin you. I am. I'm going to draft the Section 1983 civil rights lawsuit myself. I'm going to depose you. I'm going to sit across a conference table and dismantle your entire career, brick by brick, on the public record." Marcus placed a proud, firm hand on his son's shoulder. He looked at Captain Harlan one last time. "You have a rot in your house, Captain, and we are going to burn it out." With that, Marcus, Jordan, and William turned and walked out of the precinct. They didn't look back. The aftermath was a legal bloodbath that made headlines across the eastern seaboard. True to his word, Jordan refused to let his father's connections sweep the incident under the rug. He wanted it public. William Harlan's firm filed a massive federal civil rights lawsuit against the city of Philadelphia, specifically targeting Pierce, Voss, Hale, and the systemic failures of the 9th District. When the body camera footage was subpoenaed and played in federal court, it was damning. It clearly showed Jordan complying, calmly stating the law, and Officer Pierce escalating to unprovoked violence. The city settled the lawsuit for a substantial sum before it even went to a jury. But Jordan didn't keep a dime of it. He took the entire settlement and established a foundation to provide pro bono legal defense for marginalized youth in Philadelphia who were falsely accused and couldn't afford representation. Officer Pierce was fired, stripped of his pension, and indicted by the Department of Justice on federal civil rights charges. Detective Hale was forced into early retirement, his reputation shattered, forever blacklisted from law enforcement. Months later, Jordan Langford walked across the stage at the Pencarry Law graduation. When the dean handed him his diploma, the crowd erupted in applause. But the loudest cheer came from the front row where Judge Marcus Langford stood, beaming with pride. Jordan had survived the harsh reality of the streets and weaponized his trauma into a shield for others. He wasn't just his father's son anymore. He was a force of nature, proving that the law, when wielded by the righteous, is the most powerful weapon on earth. If this story made your blood boil and proved the absolute importance of knowing your rights, hit that like button right now. Jordan's unbelievable triumph shows why we must always hold corrupt systems accountable. Have you ever faced an unfair situation and had to stand your ground? Drop your story in the comments below. I read every single one. Don't forget to share this video to spread awareness and subscribe to the channel for more incredible true life justice stories.